What's up, guys? So I'm back and I'm going to be doing that DIY wheel alignment using nylon. I recommend string, nylon, anything, preferably something stronger, not string, but anything that has a lot of flex to it. You don't want to be using something super tight. I have used electrical wire before, but it's got to be a thin gauge. You don't want to use thick electrical wire, obviously. And then, there's videos like this online, but there's not many just like raw amateur videos that I could find. They've all already got it set up. So what you want to do is you want to get your string or nylon, and this is fishing line, like fishing braided, 4-braided fishing line, and you want the length of the bike about 4 times. 4 times just makes it easier. You could do 3 times and get away with it, but I find 4 is better because you want the length of the bike all the way across twice, and then you want extra left over. So I'd say 3 times would be safe, but 4 if you got lots of extra stuff. And also, it can be hard if you don't have long arms to like get the length of the bike. It's better to overestimate rather than underestimate. So that's 3, and I'll just do like 3.5, something like that. So I've just been doing my arm's breadth, which is almost the bike, and then I give it a little bit of extra slack. And that's just because you don't want to run out after you wrap it around. Because what you do to align it is you wrap it around the front wheel at a point lower than the disc brake. So it doesn't hit anything, although, that's usually not a big issue. It depends on your wheel size as well. And, the wheel thickness actually is the more important issue. If your wheels are thick, then as it wraps around the rubber and you pull it to the back of the bike to align it with the rear wheel, it'll hit the disc brake if they're thick. So just look at your tire and see if it's thicker, that it might knock the disc. And if it is, wrap it lower, wrap it like, around the lower portion. And then you want to pull it through one of the spokes or whatever you've got, your mags. And I might do it, like, where's a good point here? Above this one, actually. So I might do it there and then get to the halfway point. So after you've wrapped it once, halfway it. So just hold one end, and you might have to walk away from the bike to do this. Like, I'm going to do that now, actually, because that makes it a bit easier. I'm not going to get it caught in. I've already got it caught. Good on me. So basically just try to pull it so that you got roughly the same length on both sides. Put it under the center stand. And the main time you want to do this is especially if you've had a tire change or sprocket change, where the vulcanizers here in the Philippines don't actually know what wheel alignment is sometimes. And you tell them wheel alignment and they just care about the sprocket, because doing the proper wheel alignment is actually, takes a bit of effort. And they don't always have the tools available or the time available or nylon or, so they just kind of wing it too. And that can create a problem if you need traction and you're riding in wet weather, for example. If your rear wheel is not aligned properly, the wheel will slide around and it feels like you've got no traction. Like, that's the actual feeling. If it's a bad wheel alignment, the rear wheel will always be slipping left and right. Like, it'll just feel like something's off, like something's wrong with the bike. And in dry weather, it might ride perfectly fine. Going uphill rides perfectly fine for me, even in wet weather. But going downhill especially, I'm not even braking and I feel the rear wheel wanting to like go a different direction all the time, and I'm having to constantly correct it. And that's when I can tell that my wheel alignment is off. So you can't just look at the chain and go, oh, the sprocket's straight, so the wheel's straight. That's technically not going to reveal an alignment issue. So when you've got it wrapped around properly, look up the side and try to make sure it's not hitting anything. And then if it is, like in my case, just go and quickly try to correct that first, like try to make it as straight as possible without hitting any obstructions, or even position it lower on the wheel if it's hitting stuff that's higher or whatever. And you just want both sides to be about even coming around to the front. So I can see I've got like a bit of this too high. So I'm just fixing that up. And I'm going to just make it line up with, wait, this isn't even as. Okay, tighten that up a bit. Alrighty, so I can adjust this camera now. So when you've got both ends, if you're by yourself and you don't have anyone to basically check the alignment for you, you want to tie it. And this is like a cool trick that I didn't see posted online. And then what you do is you roll the wheel, because it'll be on the tread of the wheel, hopefully, if your tires aren't bald. And you roll it up a bit to put tension on it. And that lets you basically do DIY. So when there's a lot of tension on that, now I can I can actually go check everything. So I've got it tied here, and I can see, I can see the fishing line, and you want to make sure it's not hitting anything. So if it is, then you have to lower it. Now I can tighten that just a bit, like almost like a guitar string. So I can actually hear it. Maybe I can play it. Yeah, I can. And oh, that's what I did last time. Put it into first gear. Okay, that's better. So now that I've done that, center the, I'm gonna have to clip this video so much. Center the front wheel. Okay, so I'm centering the front wheel to the bike. My ground is not level. If you have level ground, it's much better. But just try to center, try to center it as much as you can. And then make sure it's not hitting anything on either side. And by hitting anything, I mean center stand, disc brake. It's okay if it's hitting the tire. So basically what you want to do is, with it pulled tight, you want to look directly up the back wheel, like to the front portion of the back wheel from behind. So you want to look on the left and the right and see if the string is hitting one side more than the other, and there's a gap. If there's a gap on one side, your alignment's off. And basically loosen your wheel and adjust the adjusters to tilt that alignment so that it's even, or as close to even as possible on both sides, while also keeping an eye on the sprocket. So, if the sprocket chain starts to push on one side, you've got some kind of issue there. Sometimes just pulling the wheel and adjusting the chain slack will help fix that. But for me, I find it's more important. They say that the engine sprocket's important, but I find they're equally important. It would be better to have both a little bit off than to have one perfect and one way off, where you're getting handling issues. Come on. Okay. So if I look up here, I can see that it's hitting the left of the front wheel, and there's a small gap before it hits. It's not hitting the rear wheel. There's like a tiny gap there. And then here on the right side, it's hitting the right side, and it's also hitting the front wheel. Like the string is aligned on the front wheel, basically. And the better way to also check the front wheel is straight is you just center it to the frame of the bike. So, I'm looking at the front wheel and trying to get it as straight as possible. And I can see here it's a tiny bit off here too, but that's because it's hitting the rear wheel first. And that basically means when I play with the adjusters, I'll be able to straighten that up. So it's hitting here on the left side. And there's a big gap. It's about 1/2 inch gap on the back. So this would be from when I had the sprocket changed. The guy loosened the adjust. I don't know why. They were perfect. And I think he was trying to adjust the chain slack. So he loosened the adjusters to adjust he didn't do it evenly. He did this side a little bit, and then he played with the other side. And so now there's a good, I'd say that's about 1 cm gap on the left. So I should be able to straighten that. If I tighten this side, it'll push the wheel that way and tighten the chain, which means my slack will go out, and then the rear, this side, will actually come closer to the string and align it more. But in order to do that properly, I actually have to push both wheels forward a bit to bring the overall align, to give more chain slack, so that when I do align the rear wheel, it evens out. And then I get to, I need at least 1.5 inches of slack, or 1 inch of slack in the middle for the mountain riding that I do. If there's not enough slack, I feel a lot of pressure when I do gear changes. So loosen that. Oh. And if you have a top box, don't just stand up, because I've hit my head on my top box about 4 times now. So loosen, but don't super loosen. You don't want the bearing to be wiggling around. You just want it to be tight enough that when you adjust stuff, it can move. If you hit on it. But yeah, this is what I prefer. If your alignment's only slightly off, don't fully loosen it. Just enough that if you bang on it like this, see with the back of my hand, if I hit here and I've loosened the adjusters, then the wheel will move forward, but only if I hit it. And that way you can kind of fine tweak it. But if you loosen everything super loose, you'll have to everything's just going to be off, and you'll have to basically do all of it from scratch. From low. So where was I? was about here, and then roughly like it hits the sprocket. It's you know, it doesn't have to be a huge amount, but you're going to be adjusting it anyway. And then try to hit the wheel forward. When the wheel's forward a bit, your chain slack should improve, and you should feel it push up against the thing. If it doesn't, then you haven't loosened it enough, like me. So I'm going to loosen it a bit more. Okay, I can see the bearing coming loose a little bit. The spacer, I mean, not the bearing. So when the spacer's a bit loose, you can hit the wheel and it'll push up against this. So now I should have more slack, which I do. And I'll check that alignment one more time, and I'll see if it's still off by the same. It is still about the same. And then, now what was it? This is where you get to play around with it. So basically, I'm going to sit down. Basically, if I look at it from a low angle, I can see that the left side has more of a space than the right side. The right side's touching. And if I tighten one of these sides, you can literally, as you tighten the, because you've got everything a little bit loose, right? As you tighten the adjuster on one side, you'll actually see the wheel move by millimeters. And you can actually try to fine tune it that way. So the side that has the gap, I'm going to tighten. And I should be able to see the gap on the string that I've set up lessen. So yes, I'm seeing it going towards the string now. I'm going to try to get the camera in a bit closer. So you can see here the gaps up here where I'm looking. If you can see that on the camera. And I'm tightening the left side where the gap is. And we'll see if we can catch it on camera. As I tighten it, the wheel should be creeping over towards the string. Yeah, it's almost like touching now. Almost. No, there's still a bit of a gap. Okay, I'll keep going. But yeah, there will be a side effect though, when it, especially when it's on the chain sprocket side, you'll start to see the chain tighten up, which if you haven't hit the wheel forward enough together on both sides, have to go forward, you're going to end up with a tight chain. And that's just about touching now. And then check the other side as well. And the other side is still pushing quite firmly on the right. So what I want to do is adjust it even further, but also check now the chain is super tight. So that's the downside, and that's why you need to make sure that you knock the wheel far enough forward. I'll give you the idea of what you meant to do until I get it right, and then you'll see what I've done. So loosen both sides so that you have some slack. So push it forward where you've got the good chain slack. I want a little bit more than that, actually. And the side that needs more slack, like has the gap, is also the side you want to loosen a bit more as you're doing this. You can you get a feel for it when you've done it a few times. But basically, because I know the left is, having the gap, I'll loosen the left more instead of the right, and I'll just loosen the right a little bit, and that kind of helps with adjustment. So let's see here. So it's still touching on the rear of the front without hitting the center stand. It's still touching the front of the rear right side of the front wheel and the front right side of the rear wheel on the right. And on the left, it is also touching, like I don't know if you can see it, but on the left, it's also touching, not as strongly, like there's a slight bend on the right side still, but you want to try to get them both as close as possible while still having some middle ground on the center. And then if this is what I want, actually. It's actually from hitting it and just doing by finger, like just trying to adjust more on the left, I've actually aligned the wheels already, and the chain looks to be aligned, but I can't spin it freely yet because I have to undo the string. What I do now is I have to get the slack right, and the way that I can get the slack right without losing that wheel alignment is by tightening up the locking nuts just close. And this allows me to kind of tweak it finer, like I was saying before, if you can get things close and then you use the locking nuts and you use a similar amount of turn, and this takes practice. Otherwise you just have to keep checking. And it doesn't matter if you're not practiced, if it's your first time, you just have to keep checking everything, checking the chain and checking the wheel and the string on the left side and the string on the right side, and make sure it's not hitting the center stand. So kind of like you're checking 3 different things at the same time on both sides, and you'll eventually get it. So now that I've got it like that, I want to get the chain slack a little bit tighter, but only a little bit. And the way I'll do that is by pushing the wheels back, right? But because my wheel alignment's good, like the string is basically touching on both sides when I tighten it up. It's rubbing on the front wheel, and it's rubbing on the rear wheel. And on the other side, it's doing the same thing. So that's basically as good alignment as you can get, as long as your sprocket's not, you know, the center of the chain is not like off one side of the sprocket. It's okay if it's like a tiny bit to the right or a tiny bit to the left. You just don't want it to be rubbing against the left or the right, okay? So now that I've got that, I can tighten up these, well, not too much. I just did a little bit on the right, like it actually moved the wheel because I loosened the wheel enough that just by finger I can adjust the adjusters by turning the locking nuts. It'll actually push. So what I want to do now is tighten the chain up, which is loose, and I do that by turning both sides. I'll just use a spanner because it makes it easier, but by turning it like a small amount, because it doesn't take much, and making sure there's a tiny bit of slack in the adjusters. Sorry, I did tighten them up, but I can just give that tiny bit of slack there. It's just so that I don't make a massive mistake by turning it too far. So maybe a full turn, and then clockwise, like that, half turn or so, and then the same on the other side, half turn or so, and just checking the string alignment, and then seeing if the chain, yeah, that's already, I could get a little bit more. So just make sure there's a bit of play in the locking nuts. And I am doing this from a backyard, like beginner's perspective though. So if it seems amateur, because it is, I haven't been professionally trained or anything. I'm just doing the best I can at home. So now the chain feels about good. There's about an inch, and about an inch. I do go uphill a lot though. I'm in the bookend. I could loosen that a tiny bit, but then I'd have to hit it. It's fine. So that'll do. And I'm more important that I got the wheels aligned, because there was like a good gap before, and now you can see up the back of the rear wheel, you're looking at the rear left of the front wheel and the rear front left of the back wheel, and they're both hitting the tread now of the tire. So that's what you want, and you want it as close as you can on both sides. It's okay if it's a little bit stronger on the right or the left, whatever. I could probably try to like perfect that a bit more, but that's not going to slip around on me. That's not going to slip around on me anywhere near as much as it was doing from when I went and got the sprocket, you know, whatever the vulcanizer did. So just tight, and you can also see what I'm doing here. As I check the alignment, I tighten this by turning the back wheel, by pulling it back a bit, and that tightens up the string, so that you can almost play it like a. You can hear a sound when you go to click on it, strum on it, click, until I'm a gamer too, right? And yeah, you're just looking at that string and making sure that both sides are roughly the same. I would say that the front is still hitting a little bit harder, so I could tighten this back wheel up more, but then I'd have to hit everything forward again. So you get the idea. You got to hit everything forward to have free play to align it more without the chain going too tight, because that's what will happen. If I tighten this right now as is, the chain's going to tighten up too much, and I'm not going to have enough free play for riding in the mountains like I do. That's not too bad, actually. Wait, I'll get it in between the tread on the other side, and it's doing the same thing. Oh, that's okay. That's actually pretty damn good. So now what I want to do is finger tight the lock nuts, or even tighten them fully. But it'll push. No, it'll push. I just want to finger tight them, and then I want to do up the wheels and hope that that doesn't go out while I'm tightening. So let's get back to that. And also make sure that tightening it doesn't go out of alignment too much either, because it will affect it a little bit. You know, when you tighten it, one side pulls on the other a bit. And if your locking nuts are good, you can tighten those up once you've tightened it a fair bit, but not too much, just the same amount on both sides so you don't wreck anything. And check your chain slack. So I'm checking the chain slack, checking the adjusters before I do the final few, and checking the alignment is improved, at least better than it was. So, you know, at the very least, if you don't feel you got it perfect, if you've made it better than it was, you haven't done anything wrong. You just make sure you don't like leave the wheel loose. Yeah, or one notch above hard, like one pull above hard is what I do. And then when I go to pull on it, like with the medium force, it's like it doesn't want to move at all. So you can see here, I have to like, it's already gonna pull on the bike. Yeah, the bike's gonna fall back off the center stand. So now if I check it, I've narrowed the left side alignment. The right side still how it was, and I've got good chain slack, a decent amount of chain slack. But this is a throwaway chain, so I don't really care if I cause premature chain wear. I care more that the wheel's in alignment, and then I can drop this string down and do the oh, I'm still in gear. Okay, and then I can do the obligatory, you know, spin of the back wheel and see if the chain, and it is still centered. The chain is still exactly how it was. So that means that it is hard to notice if the wheel is slightly off alignment without doing this fishing line trick. After tightening up your rear wheel, tighten your adjuster nuts. It doesn't really matter if this is super tight, but it helps just to have them, you know, tight that they won't accidentally turn somehow. And just hand tight, but you know. There we go. Anyway, thanks for watching, guys, and I'll see you in the next one.